Burt, maybe we could start with you telling us how long you've been doing this and what it was that first attracted you to crop circles.
I think that one gust of wind.
That's okay. Because suddenly the sunshine is gone while I still see blue sky. Yeah, they found me again.
Okay.
So you just you're rolling. Everything is
Everything's good, yeah.
okay.
We're rolling.
We're good.
You want to wait for the helicopter?
Yep.
Let's wait for the helicopter. That's a commercial one. Just tell me when it's okay for you, then I will just start.
Cool. Alex will cue
Yeah, I'll
us.
let you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a gunship we saw at lunch. Yeah.
There was actually, yeah.
Yeah. That's the fourth I've seen since I've been here. You know, the other thing we're going to get, guys, is rush hour. People coming home.
Well,
So let's rush.
Yep, let's rush.
exactly. Another 5 seconds.
Okay, we're good. So the first question, Bert, is how long have you been doing this and what got you into crop circles?
My adventure started in crop circles in 1994 with an amazing experience I had with the crop circle in Holland. And that was so impressive for me that I decided to go for 1 year to England, just 1 year. So in 1995 I came to the UK for the first time, thinking that would be the last time as well. And since then I've been back and back and back and back.
Great. What is it that draws you back time and again?
What draws me, shall I wait just for this little thing? Okay, I will just give the answer as soon as. It's farmland, so you can expect farmers here.
Yeah.
That's pretty good now.
So what draws you back time and again?
I came back after the first time because somehow I got more questions than answers actually. The questions were just increasing and increasing. And every year that I come back to England, I leave with more questions than I came with. So somehow this phenomenon is really a huge phenomenon. Many years ago somebody told me if you dive into something and instead of questions or answers you get more and more questions, then you're looking at a true miracle. So I think we are facing a true miracle here.
Over the years, you've seen the designs change quite a bit. Can you talk about how they've changed and why you think they might be changing or evolving if you want?
The shapes of crop circles have changed a lot over the years. When I came in the arena, there were all these long crop circles, and there were two people studying them, and there was John Martineau and Wolfgang Schindler from Germany. And they looked at the outside geometry, and I was really intrigued. But in the moment I got intrigued, the shapes shifted, and no longer long ones anymore. Now they were mandalas. And I noticed that if there was a geometry on the outside, there should also be a geometry on the inside. So I started studying that, and that's a really intriguing field. There's a lot of hidden geometry inside of these crop circles. And over the years, yes, the crop circles have changed in shape, but somehow the geometry has not. The message is still there, and that really triggers me year after year after year.
What is the geometry, in your opinion, what is the geometry trying to teach us?
The geometry, the really interesting aspect of the geometry is that it has a human aspect to it. So in one way, it's a very intricate geometry. On the other hand, there's a human element involved. but it cannot be made by humans. So what you would see is you would start reconstructing a crop circle. Strange enough, you can do that with the compasses. And that's a human instrument because we cannot make circles ourselves. We need the compasses. But the compasses method and ruler method can be applied. So the crop circles are built that way. But every crop circle will show that they skip a step that I cannot skip. But seemingly the phenomenon can skip that, and that's really mind-boggling. So on one hand, it's very human, and on the other hand, it just skips a step and becomes in something really much bigger. And I think we should look at that much more close than we have done so far.
What does this hidden geometry say about the hoaxing aspect? How hard is it to like you said, to construct the hidden geometry?
In a way, you can make every crop circle yourself. So in a way, every crop circle can be reproduced. So it can be done. If you have time enough, then you can reproduce every crop circle. So it's not so much that it's undoable, that humans could not do that. It's much more that there are elements, not so much in the geometry, but in other parts of the crop circles that will indicate, yes, it looks like human activity, but it's not because, for instance, nothing is broken. There's all these strange anomalies in the plants which cannot be explained with mechanical force. So there are a lot of elements that will tell you this is a phenomenon. But the geometry will tell you, but guess what? That phenomenon is not that far away from you.
You've noted how the crop circles, they seem to indicate megalithic sites, ancient sites. Is this, would you agree with that? And is this just local to Wiltshire, or do we find it elsewhere, like Egypt, for instance?
Wiltshire has a lot of ancient sites, has a lot of long barrows. Avebury is there, Silbury Hill is there, but that's something else. If you look at Wiltshire, northern Wiltshire, you will see there's a geometry in the landscape. If you look at the churches, which are actually built on old pagan sites, these churches will form a circle. And there are actually two of these circles, and they're really big and they're identical in size. And when you study that, you will see it's not just circles, there are also lines, and there's a whole geometry that encloses a shape, a triangle, which is identical in slopes and angles to the Great Pyramid in Egypt. And that's mind-boggling again, because somehow can it be that people from here went to Egypt, or was it the other way around? Or was there no contact at all, which makes it actually more fascinating, because somehow both groups were fascinated by the same shape that encodes squaring the circle, and that makes it now really fantastic.
Talking about squaring the circle, this is something that hadn't been done to this degree of accuracy until the circle makers showed us how. Would you agree with that, and can you elaborate on that some?
Squaring the circle is something that's really special. It's not to be found in nature. It's something that we, mankind, has been puzzled by for I don't know how many thousands of years. Really great minds were intrigued by this square and circle that were identical. So the perimeter of the square is the same as the circumference of the circle. Not to be found in nature, but strange enough, it does pop up in crop circles. So somehow crop circles show us something that is not from here. It's coming from a complete other realm. And it's the only place where we find it, except in the Great Pyramid, where we also find it.
We've talked to some people who suggest that, John Cowie, for instance, that Silbury Hill might be a pyramid. Can you talk about the potential for perhaps a technology here that we're missing? That maybe is in Silbury and also in Giza.
There has to be a really strong connection between Silbury Hill and the Giza Plateau, actually the Great Pyramid there. If you draw a line from Silbury Hill to the Great Pyramid, you get really something fascinating. The line will arrive at the Great Pyramid under an angle of 51 degrees, which is exactly the slope of the Great Pyramid itself. But because of the curvature of the Earth, the angle will be different at Silbury Hill. So when you get to Silbury Hill, now the angle is 30 degrees, which is exactly the angle of the slope of Silbury Hill. This is really fascinating. Now, if we look at the latitudes of the two places, you will see that the latitude of the Great Pyramid is 30 degrees, and the latitude of Silbury Hill is 51 degrees. So somehow the two are brother and sister, are circle and square. It's fascinating.
We see this, you just mentioned this self-referencing, a site references itself. The only other place I can think of that you find that is in crop circles. Would you agree? Can you touch on that, how a crop circle will often refer to its date, its exact location, and how it's aligned to Avebury and Silbury and Stonehenge?
Crop circles have many facets to them, and one of the facets is that it's not only the geometry of the crop circle but also the placing of it. So it will place itself in the landscape in such a way that it will line up, and it will line up many times to this geometry in the Wiltshire landscape. It can be it's pointing at a specific spot, or it's actually placed at a specific spot. So I'm really fascinated by the fact that somehow the phenomenon is showing us that it's not the separate crop circles we should look at. We should look at the bigger picture. And sometimes I wake up in the morning and think, actually there's only one crop circle. One huge crop circle, and the only thing we see is different aspects of it. We see an aspect here, an aspect there, and we consider that we really take it as separate crop circles. But actually there's only one huge crop circle. We just have not put it all together yet.
Have you had any strange experiences you can tell us about in a crop circle, or have you seen an orb, anything that convinces you there is more to the phenomenon?
In 1997, I was doing a night watch close to Woodborough Hill, and I was just about to leave. And this is always interesting. You're just about to do something. So you arrive, or you're just about to leave, when I saw this, what I thought was a fire. So I thought, that's some fire in the woods there. So I took my binoculars and looked at it, and I saw immediately it's not a fire, it's actually circular, but it's alive like fire. And I had no idea what to make of it, and then suddenly it started to move. It started to float away from the woods, over the fields with Woodborough Hill in the background. So it was not high up in the sky, there was actually a backdrop. And sometimes it would grow tremendously in size, becoming really big, a couple of meters in diameter. And then it would shrink again to a little tennis ball. So it was this pulsating movement it made while it was floating, and it gave me continuously this feeling of fire, an open fireplace. Took about 2-3 minutes, disappeared behind the shed, never reappeared again. That made such a deep impression. From that moment on, I knew something big is going on here.
What would you, if you were asked what that orb was, what would you say?
I have no idea what that orb was. I was not really communicating with it. It was not for me that I thought, oh, that's an intelligence and somehow I'm talking to it or it talks to me. I was merely, for me, a witness of an event. And yes, it had a fairly intelligent feel to it, but it's not that I thought, this is E.T.
Speaking of E.T., this is a tough question. Who's making these, do you believe?
The question of who is making these crop circles, that's of course what everyone wants to know. Now, we have the tendency to look outside of ourselves. We have done that throughout the ages. For a long time we looked at God and we thought God was good or God was bad, and we had to pray to God. But what we did was actually look for a miracle outside of ourselves. When you go to the crop circles, many people will do the same thing. They will point outside, it's E.T., it's coming from another planet, another star system, and it's going to help us. And I feel very uncomfortable with that thought. I think actually it's much closer. It's not that far away, and deep down I'm convinced it's actually somehow us. It can be us from the future or from the past, but on a very deep level we're talking to ourselves. It's not E.T., it's us we're looking at. We just cannot hear what we are saying.
You make a good point that this might be us. Do you think that these circles were here before and that they're returning now because of the time?
I'm convinced they were earlier already. I will start at one again. I think that the circles came down already many centuries ago, but it's interesting that they really came in great numbers from the late 1700s onwards. And I've wondered about that, and I came to the conclusion that somehow we have enough knowledge now and enough insight in physics to understand a much bigger picture than we could, let's say, 100 years ago. We can now see that reality is not as it is. Reality is created by our own mind. The way we observe the world will create the world. That insight we didn't have 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So crop circles would not have had that impact 100 years ago. It had to wait until our mind, our conscious mind was developed in such a way that we could understand these concepts. It's a little fly, and I heard him coming and I thought, I have to wrap it up quick there.
How's it sounding?
Other than those big trucks, it's okay. There's
Other than the big truck though,
big
how's it?
trucks, yeah. Those small cars that just pass by really quick aren't so bad.
Okay, good. Bert, could you talk about this season, how it's different from other seasons in your opinion, if at all?
Every season is different again. So this season, this is 2009, is for me not much different than all the others because it's always unpredictable. Every year I go to Wiltshire and think, what is going to happen? And then after the season I think, oh, I could never have imagined that. So it always surprises me. And this year it happens again. There's a huge amount of crop circles in early season, in May, in June, and then suddenly it stops. And then it looks like it's dead. It picked up and July again, but why did it do that? I've never seen that before. The only thing I saw this year is that the ripe crop, all the crop circles arriving in that, the farmers cut them out. That did not happen in young crop because that would cost too much money. So it can be that the phenomenon knew already that these farmers would in 2009 be much more active in cutting out crop and so placed all the designs early in the season. And I think that's an amazing in itself again, because can you read minds, or actually does time not really exist? Are they traveling through time and just coming back from a future that we are not still aware of, but we will become aware of?
What do you make of the crop circle community? Because the human side of it is almost as bizarre as the circles themselves. It seems there's a lot of division, there's a lot of ego. Why is it that, and Isabel Kingston put this best, they bring out the best and the worst in us?
Okay, let me see how I phrase that. The crop circle community is very diverse, but it has a really good quality to it. It gives no room for the guru to stand up. Nobody will come to the crop circle community and say, I'm your leader, and the rest is going to follow that. Since that's so, it also means that you have a lot of personalities. They all have their own viewpoints. And that sometimes does cause problems, but if you sit down for it and you really give it time and you open... Yeah, is it okay? Science, in a way, has a problem that actually, when they cannot come up with an answer, they are in a way interested. If you talk to a scientist on a personal basis, then he will be interested or she will be interested. When it becomes to the collectivity of science, they need to come up with answers. They cannot live in the question. And that makes it very difficult for them to get really involved in the crop circle phenomena, because there is not a straight answer right there, right now. So science will wait until it comes close to something they know, and they only have to take a little step. If they have to make a giant leap, that's nearly impossible. It happens only once or twice in a century. You need a great mind for that, an Einstein, that can make that leap. As long as there's no Einstein, science will not get involved in crop circles.
Since you've been studying this for the last, how long have you been at this?
15 years.
So since you've been doing this for the last 15 years, how have you viewed the military's involvement, if at all?
There's definitely an involvement of the military in Wiltshire, in the crop circles. And that's actually pretty obvious. You have a phenomenon here. Somehow the phenomenon is not brought to the greater public. There will be good reasons for that. But on the other hand, they will always watch it as well, even if it's only to see if the crop circle community is behaving itself. You never know. A cult could start here and you could have a collective suicide or something. That will never happen. They will never allow that to happen. So there's a lot of involvement of all kinds of security organizations in the crop circle community just to see how the crop circle research is behaving. Besides the fact that, of course, there's the phenomenon itself. And there's a lot of activity. If you are here in Wiltshire, you will be amazed how many helicopters fly around, how many activity you see of the army. No, no, we'll get there.
One of the things we've noticed is rather odd. You go into a crop circle, especially a real one, you meet people from all over the world. People from Holland, people from Norway, from Japan, from America. You don't meet English people. Why do you think that is? That the people here, the locals, are so... they refuse to acknowledge the reality.
I have no idea why the locals are not really interested in the phenomenon. And it can be that actually the phenomenon is there not for the phenomenon in itself, but to bring together all these great minds. So it's actually a trigger for great minds to come here. And I've thought about that. If I had the plan to bring together all these really great people of the world, how would I do that? What would I do to get them all together and let them start talking and discussing? You know what? I think I would come up with a crop circle phenomenon. That would do it actually. And so sometimes I think the phenomenon is only there to bring the people together.
One of the things I've noticed looking at the geometry, this is, and we've touched on this a little bit, you see it in Egypt, but you also see it in medieval cathedrals. So could you talk, I mean, I don't know if you know much about this, but we really are interested in how this information, this geometry, has been preserved almost through the centuries in the cathedrals of medieval Europe, and hoarded almost by a select few, and now it seems it's exploding, but only because of the crop circle phenomenon.
I see a lot of similarities between the big cathedrals in Europe and the crop circles. Somehow in the geometry and in the stained glass windows of these cathedrals, it looks like the same message is encoded. It looks like the cathedrals built by the Knights Templar, they were trying to tell us the same thing. So it's nothing to do actually with traditional religion, with the organization of religion. It has a lot to do with actually the people who built the cathedrals. They had a certain way of seeing the world, and somehow they had knowledge that they tried to pass on through the ages. And for me it looks now like we're running out of time, so we have no time anymore to make huge structures and engrave it and let it sit there. It's somehow, it paced up, the whole speed it's much higher now. So they're temporary, they're there for a short time, and the next one, because somehow we don't see it, we're missing the point. And there will come a time that it will, I think, die out if we do not pay attention right now.
So that's a very interesting comment. So yeah, rather like this movie Field of Dreams, the baseball movie with the father and Kevin Costner, you're saying it requires our participation to keep this going. So really we are part of this.
I think, yes, we need to be involved. We need to be involved to actually, let's put it another way. It's not that we are passive observers. We are active observers. That does not mean we have to become active ourselves. We just have to do the observation in an active way. So we should let the message roll inside and then let it mold there and let it do and ferment the things it has to do there. But we have to be open to that. And so it's in a way, it's a radio station. You never talk back to the radio. It won't help because the radio maker won't hear you. But the radio maker can tell you things that actually will be very helpful for you. So for me, the crop circles are in the same way. And the radio maker will stop making his radio shows if he knows you're not really listening anymore. So if this phenomenon knows we're not paying attention, it will just dissipate.
Think back, if you can. See if you can remember your life before the circles and now your life now, today in 2009. How has it changed, and are you a happier person?
The crop circles have changed my life dramatically. I used to have a commercial business. I would train businessmen, commercial skills, and that I could not combine anymore. When I came across the crop circles, I could not combine it anymore. I increasingly it became difficult for me to, on one hand, be this business trainer and be on with all the talking suits, and on the other hand, be really intrigued by this phenomenon in the fields of England. So in the end, I sold my business. Did that make me a happy man? Actually, first not. it became really difficult for me because now I had to find a new way of living and a new place of finding myself in the world. And that has taken a long time for me to actually establish that. Right now, yes, I'm a much happier man than I used to be, but it was not always easy to get to that point.
Did you feel, in a sense, that you were, I want to say pushed, but that there was something, well, pulled? Maybe something was pulling you here, that this was something maybe you'd even agreed to do, that was destiny. I don't like using that word, but...
I was definitely drawn into the crop circles by the crop circles themselves. The very first crop circle I came across, I found in the field. I read about it in the newspaper and I went out to look for it actually. I did find it. It was a stubble field. The field was already harvested. And I was really amazed that I found it after hours and hours and hours of driving. Walking back to the car and looking back to the field, I was in shock because I couldn't see it anymore. And thought, how is this possible? So I drove the same stretch again with my car and I couldn't see it anymore. But the first time I saw it sitting there. So somehow the circle was shouting at me, pay attention. And once I'd done that, the story started. Wow, it's a busy place here.
Yeah.
It's Hercules.
If you could look into the future, the next couple of years, where do you see the crop circle phenomenon taking us?
Looking into the future of the crop circle phenomenon is really, really difficult for me. I have come across this phenomenon that every time I think to know where it will go, it goes somewhere else. So every time when I think, now I know, I've discovered something and this is how it works, it suddenly stopped working that way. So to be honest, I have no idea where it will go from here. I know we have to pay attention, but I have no idea where it will end in the end.
Have you ever been in a design that you felt spoke directly to you?
I've been in crop circles that gave me the feeling that that crop circle was mine. Actually, the very first one when I came to England. It was at Winterborne Bassett. My background is mathematics. I walked around and I thought, I know this design. I've seen this before. And it turned out that it was not exactly, but it was resembling Pythagoras, the theorem of Pythagoras. And that really intrigued me. I thought, there's some mathematics in the crop. So that did it for me to start studying it and start studying the mathematics in the phenomenon. Strangely enough, I've never seen a crop circle like that again. It was one of a kind and it was the very first one I walked through, and I'm sure that actually it was helping me on my path. Do this, that's your job.
You mentioned Pythagoras and math, and that leads me to sound. There have been a lot of speculation about how they're created, but it seems like they might be involving sound or ultrasound. Can you talk about that and perhaps elaborate?
Yeah, it can be that crop circles and sound have a relationship. There's many people who think actually crop circles are created by sound, and I've studied that, I've looked into that. And then about 3-4 years ago, I was at a conference and somebody was about to go on stage and suddenly there was this bat flying around. And I was just first thinking, oh, that's nice, a bat here flying around. And then it came so close that actually it touched my hair. So it flew just beside my face, touching me. And it took me a while. It took actually the woman sitting in front of me, turning around, saying, there has to be a message there. And I thought, yeah, there has to be. So I looked into bats and what they do, and I came across a phenomenon called sonoluminosity. It's actually, what they do is they compress air using sound. Then when they do that, the compression will heat up quickly, rapidly, to such an extent that you will see a flash of light. Poof. And that's called sonoluminosity. And somehow I feel that that's actually involved in the creation of crop circles. So yes, it is sound, but in a very, very specific way.
So in a sense, the crop circles could be trying to lead us to make connections between sound, light, magnetism, all these things, in your opinion?
It can be that crop circles actually try to tell us that there is a relationship between light and sound, because light, in a way, you can, through holograms, you can make them in geometrical shapes, and you can use actually geometrical shapes to make sound. So it's, in a way, sound and light is not directly correlated, but through geometry it is actually correlated. So it can be that the shapes are telling us, look at the connection between sound and light. It can be.
I just forgot my last question. What would you say to people who have never heard of crop circles before, and don't think it's worth their time?
That's a difficult one. I know people who have never seen crop circles and think it's actually a waste of their time to actually get involved in it. And somehow I've tried to convince them to have a look at them. And bit by bit I've come to actually the insight to stop that, not to bother anymore. I have the feeling that humanity is one side of humanity is going one way and the other side of humanity goes the other way. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I've noticed it's somehow unstoppable. So one group, half of humanity goes left, half of humanity goes right, and I don't know where it leads to, but I've stopped to actually tell the people who go to the right that they should go to the left. So
You just reminded me of Hopi tradition says the same thing. Says some of us go this way, there's a fork in the road. In your opinion, does that have anything to do with 2012?
2012 is a very interesting date, especially when you take in consideration that we create our own reality. So if you look at that and you think it will be doomsday, likely if we think that collectively it will be doomsday. If we think that will actually be a really perfect day and we think that collectively it will be a perfect day. So 2012 is what we make of it. And the Mayans were pretty smart in saying we will create something that will just amplify where you are in your life, where you are with your society. If your society is on the spot of doom, you will get doomsday in 2012. And if you are in a really, really nice situation, you will get perfect day in 2012. 2012 in itself is nothing. It's just we create that. And I think it's so fascinating, it's so smart. I love it.
Oftentimes, it was kind of the same question. Crop circles have archaeoastronomical relationships that lead us to, they say, look at the planets, look at the sun and the moon, look at the orbits of the planets. Have you looked at that at all? And is there anything interesting there we should know about?
I have not personally looked into the relationship between crop circles and planets and comets and things. Other people have, and I've followed their research and the outcomes. And what was most fascinating for me is when there was a prediction involved, especially a prediction of something that's actually unpredictable. Let's say sun flares, a really, really outburst of sun flares that will happen 3 years from now. And then exactly on the date exact. So that means that that prediction cannot really be done in our 3D world, that we see it not correctly. Somehow our perception of time is wrong. And the crop circles are trying to teach us in a way that we should look at time in a whole different way than we do now.
So are you talking about the biosphere, kind of versus the technosphere? You have artificial time and you have organic time. Is that?
I don't know actually. I don't know enough about it to actually have a comment on that. So.
Okay. Well, when you say time, we have to rethink time. Why would you say that? What do you think? What is wrong with the way we see time?
We see time as a linear element. It's something that just goes from one moment to the next moment to the next moment. And it was already Einstein who simply stated, we'll start it again. That's okay. We'll just let those two guys go. Sometimes they irritate me, even though you cannot hear them there. I can hear them here. We normally consider time as something that goes from one moment to the next moment to the next moment. But Einstein showed already it's very relative. It's not as simple as a minute and a minute and a minute. And he demonstrated that when you would fly with a rocket around the Earth and you would approach the speed of light, something really strange will happen. Time will slow down for you as an astronaut. So while you are sitting in that rocket for a year going around, the Earth will go through 500 years or perhaps even 5,000 years. Now think further on that line, get even closer to the speed of light. Now you sit there for 1 day on that speed and the Earth will go through, let's say, 20 billion years. And even go further, you get really close to the speed of light. Now in one brief moment, the whole history of the universe will go by. That means actually that the whole history of the universe is just one moment. It's just from which point do you actually look at it, see it. But there's only one moment, there's only now.
There's a theory that you look at all this geometry and you look at the orbits of the planets, that this has all been somehow planned. It's all part of a big machine, the symphony of the spheres. Do you think that the more you study crop circles and geometry, the more you realize perhaps there is a great composer?
Me studying crop circles and looking deeper and deeper into what actually is going on the Earth and the universe, I've come to the conclusion that there's not just one big composer. It is actually we all together are that composer. We are in totality actually creating it all. And we are so fragmented that we study these circles, we study all kinds of other things, we try to get enlightened, but we all do it on a personal basis as an individual. We never have tried to become enlightened as a community, as a totality. And I think the crop circles are telling me that that's the path to go, that somehow as a collectively unit we have to make the move and not as an individual.
Did we lose any of that? Oh, okay. This is really loud for me. Sorry. I think I'm actually
Running.
anything you'd like to add that I haven't asked you about?
Oh, that's always a difficult one in the end.
Yeah.
Actually, I think we have covered a lot of fields, actually, a lot of things, so
Yeah.
I cannot. Can you think of something that we should actually cover? Huh? Any of you?
I know there's going to be something I'll kick myself.
I should have asked him that. Now he's gone.
Oh yes, there is in fact.
Ah, there it comes.
Yep. Let's talk about Chibolton 2001, the face. What's your opinion on that? Is that real? Is that legitimate?
The Chill-Bolton phase of 2001, that was a very intriguing event. And I have never really figured out what to make of it. For me, it was difficult because I get difficulties when the shapes become too recognizable. It's just my mind works that way. So if I see something that I immediately can see what it is, I feel uncomfortable with it. Now that's something in me, it's not something about the phenomenon, but somehow I never really studied the Chill-Bolton phase. It's a little bit like the pi formation of 2008, that everybody was saying, oh, pi has arrived, pi. And it's actually true, pi is there. But somehow I think it's only there to draw our attention, to get our attention. It's not about pi, it's about something else. It's, for instance, for the pathway that goes through the crop, a public footpath, going through the crop circle, that's exactly squaring the circle. It's an amazing feature of that crop circle, but you only see that if you really pay attention, if you really open your eyes to it. And I think that pi, so the recognizable shapes, are there to draw our attention, but it's not about the shape itself then. It's about a deeper layer in that. And so Chill-Bolton was for me, in a way, too obvious. So I passed on that one.
One last crop circle question.
Okay.
Milk Hill 2001, the great big one. What are your thoughts on that? Is it possible, with the heavy rain that night and with the size of that thing, that it could have been hoaxed?
2001 showed a crop circle on top of Milk Hill that was huge. It was over 400 circles, and I was very lucky to be actually one of the very first to walk into that formation. On the moment I walked in, I actually thought I was the very first, and I had no idea what to expect. And actually when I entered it, I thought there were only 3 circles because the field was so indulated. Then when I walked in, I saw, oh no, there are 4 circles. And then I saw another crop circle on the other side of the field. I thought, let's see that one, let's walk over. That was the moment I realized it was huge. I spent 2-3 days in that crop circle. I have never seen all circles. And I find it highly inconceivable that that could be done by humans. That's a complete impossibility. The amount of circles, just to walk them, would take a couple of days to just walk the surface area. So that was one of these ones that I thought, whoa.
Okay. Very good, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, you're happy with this?
Yeah, great, fantastic.
I think it's one of our best, if
That's
not
one
our
of the
best.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe the best. That was
Okay.
Doing it in
You're
your
welcome.
In your second language, which is even more
I know.
impressive.
Yeah,
Really.
that's
Ask me to
sometimes
do that in Dutch. And
that's actually a problem for me. I can say it in so much more nuance in Dutch, but so I
Wow, you
lose
nailed
out
it.
there.
You nailed
Thank-
it.
really,
Thank
yes,
you.
the best. I think.
Hats off to you.
Very good.
Thank you. Here is your little toy. Or do I go to the toy man with that?
Yeah, yeah.